Joining us right now, the TV analyst for your Sacramento Kings. She joins us each and every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Kayte Christensen. Kayte, we had a guy in the chat earlier, which is a dumpster fire, say that he's never met a woman that's passionate about sports like guys are. So we're kind of going with that theme today is you are nothing if not passionate. And you had to watch that drivel and try to entertain us along with your broadcast partner last night. Good morning. How are you?
Oh, good morning. I feel like Tuesdays have not been good game days because I feel like I talked about some bad losses recently.
Yeah,
a lot of them.
They've had a few.
Yeah,
and we coined a phrase yesterday. This is how bad it is when we actually spent a couple segments yesterday talking about the fact that Charlotte had lost 11 in a row coming in, whereas they were missing serious pieces on that squad and coming in on the second night of a back-to-back when the Kings have had a day or two to rest. And would this be what we call the Wolody, the worst loss of the year, that would take over from the Portland Wolody, which took over from the Boston Wolody, which took over from the New Orleans Cup game at home Wolody. And 78% of Kings fans said that last night is the new reigning Wolody. We just don't have any explanations for it, Kayte.
Well, I mean, I don't really look at this as the worst loss or Wolody, whatever the heck you guys are using. I thought Boston was a bad loss because I thought they just didn't play well. Like I think there's been some where I don't feel like they play with the requisite energy. Last night was a weird game. I thought that they did such a great job of scrambling on defense. Like they were brilliant on the boards. They did a lot of the hustle plays, those types of things. But there was some things like the turnovers that were so uncharacteristic of this team that, it was just like, oh, wow. It never felt like they had formed any kind of flow in their offense. You were just kind of waiting for them to feel like they were starting to click. There was a ton of turnovers. I mean, DeMontis had 11, and I would say 4 of those were offensive fouls. Like it had a very weird flow to it in terms of the offense. But it doesn't. And yes, I mean, you look at the whole scope of things. Like you look at, they had lost 11 in a row. It's a team playing with a lot of injuries, so on and so forth. But like, that's also to me, I don't know, a little bit disrespectful because a team is not going to lose 82 games. Like when you're on a losing skid like that and you're going through stuff, like it kind of builds this weird energy and you can become really dangerous as a team. Any team on any given night can beat any other team in the NBA. I don't care who you are, what the story is. So I think that we have a tendency to look at those things like record, that kind of stuff, and be like, oh, it's just a terrible loss. Well, I don't know. I try to look at the bigger picture. And to me, I thought there was good things last night, but it had just a really, really weird feeling on the offensive end. And there's going to be games where it's just like, wow, they just didn't have it,
Yeah. On something Kayte, Dave, and I were talking about earlier, and you were closer to the floor, and I'm not saying you know exactly what happened because you were working, you're trying to sort it all out. We were trying to figure out the whole situation with Malik Monk and Mike Brown. For Malik to only play 5 minutes in the first half was very curious. I know Coach Brown talked about it post-game saying, yeah, that Malik and I have gotten into stuff before. It won't be the last time either. But do you know any more about what that might even be and kind of what led to any of that last night with those two?
No clue. I will say, like, I looked at, before halftime, it was like I looked kind of at the stat sheet, one of the timeouts, and I was like, wow, Malik's only played like 5 minutes. Like, I think it was like actually 4:59 he played in the first half, and there was no indication at all. I didn't catch anything that was going on, and he played well in the second half. He came in, he hit a couple threes. He looked at the bench, he looked at Mike Brown, and after all of that, I mean, there was some stuff that happened on the floor, and Mike and Malik were talking, and Malik was like, that was right in front of us, and he was super receptive. It was normal. Like, I don't I don't know that anything did happen. I didn't see anything happen, but like, I kind of felt like, okay, is this potentially happening because he's now altered the starting lineup, which a lot of people were wanting him to do. Let's just be clear about that. Like, can't tell you how often media is asking about with Kevin Huerter's shooting struggles. Like, anyway, you're going to change the starting lineup. It's like, okay, so he changes the starting lineup and you put Chris Duarte in there. Well, then now you have to figure out what your rotation is off the bench because you've had the same rotation for a while now. When do you bring Kevin in? When do you bring Malik in? And I think that I kind of looked at it as like, okay, maybe this is just him trying to figure it out. But I don't know that anything specific happened. And I think if it did, I don't know that either one would ever share it.
Kayte Christensen joining us, Kings TV analyst. And let's zoom out to 50,000 feet. Kayte, we joke about it, but this is incredibly frustrating. I mean, this team's really, I'm really starting to dislike them because I hate when it's one thing if you suck and the other team's better, but this is not the case with this team. And we can go back through, as we just did, whether it's Charlotte, whether it's Portland, whether it's not showing up for Boston, not showing up against the Clippers. There's like 8 or 9, it seems like, really bad losses. They come back home. Charlotte, again, has lost 11 in a row. I understand what you said about them being dangerous. I don't disagree with that. They're NBA players too. They're missing major pieces last night. And they played the night before in Denver, Mile High. How the hell is this team losing to the Charlotte Hornets? How are they losing these weird games against lame teams consistently?
I mean, am I supposed to have an answer that makes you feel better?
I get it. No, and I'm not looking to you for.
Like, I can talk about the X's and O's. I can talk about the things that went wrong, but I kind of already covered that in your first question to me. I understand, that this is, you want an improvement on next year. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, they're going into the new year with the same record that they had a year ago going. I think it's like 19 wins going into the turn of the calendar year. So this team isn't awful. I just think that this team has, it has much higher expectations than it did a year ago. So it's more frustrating to people when they lose and more frustrating when they have a bad game. But over the course of 82 games, you're going to have some bad games. And I don't know, like I said, I felt like tonight, last night didn't qualify as like one of their worst games of the year because I thought there was really great things that I haven't seen from them. They scrambled and played energetically, collectively on the defensive end, did some stuff on the glass, on both the offense and defensive glass, following plays better than I think I've seen them all year. I really do believe that last night. They just stunk on offense. They just could not develop any kind of flow. You have to give Charlotte some credit for that. It was a team playing that was desperate, but it was also like, there's going to be nights where your offense isn't, you're not going to be able to rely on it as this, crazy offense that we know the Kings can have, like where they're hitting 23 threes, it's not going to be that night in and night out. Like, I understand the frustration, but I guess I also look at it as the fact that if this team wants to do anything in the postseason, they have to be able to defend teams. They have to be able to collectively do some things and cause some damage on the defensive end, on the glass, do some of those hustle things, the energy things, and they have to do that well and consistently. And everyone complained about their defense a year ago, rightfully so, because they were among the bottom in the league. Like, going into yesterday's game, they were 19th in the league in defensive rating after being the bottom of the barrel last year. They're making progress and trending in the right direction. And sometimes the way that happens when you're doing that, you're sacrificing some other things. It's a process for them to figure out how to play at both ends of the floor. Like, we're 30 some odd games into the season. This isn't happening in game, 75. I think I'd be a little bit more concerned, but I think they're figuring some crap out. Truly.
Katie, when the coach makes the move to put Chris Duarte in the starting lineup, granted, I get it, it's 2 games, so we've only got the 2-game sample size, but the 1 game was probably their most complete performance in Memphis. Then last night was, as you described, just they were off collectively. Do you think Coach Brown's getting what he wanted so far? Again, 2 games of the roster tweak to the starting lineup, but do you think he's getting what he kind of wanted out of that?
I mean, I think so. That's something that if I had to bet, if we asked him that question, that it would be, I want to see a larger sample size of it. I think that Chris Duarte adds something different to the starting lineup because defensively, he's able to do some things and have some different guard matchups, which in essence takes a little bit of pressure off of De'Aaron Fox to have to be guarding someone like Trae Young or John Morant for an entire game, right? But offense isn't the problem in the starting lineup. It certainly isn't. But having someone consistently that can play defense, and I think that that's kind of why the change came. They gave Kevin an opportunity to pick up his defense. I think that he tried. He did his best. He's made some strides in that direction, but it was also happening while simultaneously he's really struggling offensively. So it's like, okay, they gave him a sufficient amount of time to be able to kind of turn things around on both ends. And if you're not turning it around specifically on the offensive end, then okay, we're going to make a change here and go for defense. And I do like what Chris has brought so far. But I think there's an adjustment period. I really do. So we'll see what it looks like after, like, say, a 5-game sample size. If the rotations and how he does in the scoring and the offense. Obviously, scoring was not an issue in Memphis, and he was in the starting lineup. Well, they scored, just over 100 points last night. So, do you blame that on the roster or the lineup change? I don't think so, but they're gonna, take a look at everything.
Well, Katie, as we wrap up, I'm going to give you some flowers, as hard as it is for me to do. There are 2 things you do that I hate more than anything. One is I can't ever get you to decide between 2 things, that give me a grade or yes or no. And then a lot of times after frustrating losses like this, you come on and, you'll give us reasons, which I call excuses and you call reasons as to why. So I had set up a whole bingo card as to things I thought you were going to throw out as far as excuses as to why. And I even did a follow-up question to try to lead you down the road. I think you did one, which was actually not even that exciting because it was actually a pretty decent reason. You seem, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like it's kind of a combination like the rest of us. You're at a loss for answers and also frustrated like the rest of us with what you're seeing in the inconsistency.
You're giving me my flowers for that?
I'm saying that I expected you to come on and make me angry because you were going to have like these logical reasons as to, why I even made a list, Katie. I made a list of things that I thought people were going to say, not just you. I made a whole list and you didn't really cover any of these. First came back from a trip. When Hornets players are injured, others will step up to the opportunity. We're adjusting the new starting lineup. Can't win them all. The holidays are tough. Pete Youngman came in and said he offered himself up as someone to blame along with the Maloofs. Sean Thomas said the refs. And the whole, hey, they could be not in the playoffs and they have a good record. I can't remember the one you said, but it was one I'd actually said earlier. I think we repeated each other. And I'm telling you, you didn't hit any of the bingo stuff. And I'm saying, I think I can hear in your voice, I don't think you're having it this morning. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but you sound frustrated.
I'm not frustrated. I think the frustration comes from, but here's the honest to God truth. Like, I get it. Like, I understand watching this team and looking at opponents and losses, and you look at the Boston loss. Oh, it's disgusting. It's just like, no, I'm sorry. I don't react the same way, I think, as a lot of other people do. And you're not going to get me to be super angry about this game. It sucks. You move on. You have another one. You're going to beat teams that you're not supposed to beat in situations where you shouldn't beat them. You're going to lose to teams where, on paper, you shouldn't lose to them. I think for me, I'm okay with people being frustrated. I'm not frustrated. The frustrating thing to me is kind of having to go through kind of the whole thing, right? Of like, okay, like, you know, in the end, like I played the game, Dave, and I know people don't like to hear that. It's like, it's an excuse. It's like, I look at this a little bit differently. And I've been in some stinkers. I've played in some stinkers. And there's some where it's like, man, that sucks. We lost. We shouldn't have lost. But you can't freaking dwell on it. Like, you can't. You have to take the lessons you can from it, and you have to move on. So I guess for me, the frustration is not from the loss. The frustration is with, like, the immense frustration all the time over a loss. They're going to happen. They're not going to win 82 games. Like,
and I'm not pushing back on you, because you do look at it differently, and I respect that. I do. And real talk, I'm not messing with you right now. I think for me, and I'm just speaking for a lot of fans out here, is and we'll go a little long on this because I think this is important. The frustrating thing is that it's not every team. Jason and I talked about this earlier, the 2002 era. You know, you could look up on those great teams, 5, 6, 7 losses a year to crap teams. Like, it happens. We get it. Why? I just don't understand why it's happening so consistently. And I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm just saying that's where my frustration personally comes from, is like, dude, I can't trust this team to win, and I can't trust them not to lose. Like, I don't know what the hell is going to happen with this team.
I think the reality is, like, to me, there's a lot of things that have kind of shifted with this team this year, and I'd prefer them to figure it out right now instead of the second half of the season, or to be dealing with the struggles in the second half of the season. If we look at it logistically, Keegan Murray has come into this year. He's been playing much better defense. He's someone they rely on, and his offense has been hot or cold. Like, it's terrible to look at a stat sheet at the end of a game, and we had that happen in Portland, where Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox combined for 70 plus points, and nobody else is in you know, double figures, right? Yeah. To me, we've had multiple people struggle offensively, and I truly believe those struggles are because of what they're being asked to do on the defensive end. Mike Brown couldn't ask them to do these things last year. It was his first year. He's implementing a new system, a new offense. He's trying to figure out his team, the players. We know Mike Brown. He is not new to the league. He's a defensive-minded coach, but you have to coach the personnel that you have. So when he came into the team last year, it's like, listen, like, I've got to make this offense high-powered, play to the style and abilities of the players. Now he knows the players. You're not going to do defense and offense in 1 year, right? Players know the system. He's added a few tweaks to it offensively. You have to, because teams have caught on. They know things. Now you have to do the counter to that and add some tweaks so that you can still have the advantage offensively. But you're also asking them to do a lot more defensively, because you went to the playoffs and you lost in the first round because you couldn't defend anybody. So there's early seasons. You don't snap your fingers and this stuff happens. You don't make a player a defensive player after 30 games. Like, there's a process to it. And I think he's still figuring, there's some new pieces. Chris Duarte is a new piece. I think he's still figuring out, what does he have? What is the right balance of offense and defense? And how can they make this team be good at both at the same time? Not a defensive lineup and an offensive lineup. So I would prefer them get this figured out now, right? Have some losses that hurt and sting, than to lose in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah. Okay. You know, so is this like a caterpillar or butterfly thing, kind of, where, because we have talked about this earlier, where, like, I thought, and I think a lot of other people thought, that the best performance of the year, most complete performance of the year, was against Memphis, which is another reason why this loss is pissing me off, because that was, like, offensively, defensively. You look at their defense in the second half against Atlanta. In both cases, they were held to 40 something, and I think 39 in Memphis. Like, that Memphis game, everybody was healthy for Memphis. John Morant was there, and they absolutely boat raced them and played amazing defense. And then you come into this game, and you have this inconsistency. So what I'm trying to take from what you're saying, which I think is important, is, and because we've talked about this on the show, is the whole caterpillar into a butterfly thing, that Mike Brown seemingly is not purposefully, but sacrificing some stuff here right now for the long term, which is being a team that can shut down defensively other teams in the playoffs and pick up on what they couldn't do last year?
I think that's a good analogy. I do want to point out, like, John Morant was back, but Memphis wasn't even close to healthy. They're playing without Steven Adams, which I think is the person that makes the difference on that team, from them being the number 2 team in the West last year to being what they kind of are this year, despite kind of, they're bottom of the barrel. Memphis is a team you don't really know. They're playing without Brandon Clark as well, who's very important for them. Memphis is a team that you can't even look at their record or their standing, their place in the standings and know what they are, because they've been without John Morant for 25 games. But Jaw's back, so I think a lot of people look at it as like, well, now they're full strength. That also was a game that the Kings should have gone in there and beat them. And they did. They did that. But, then they come home and they have a game like this to Charlotte. And, they had an 11-game losing streak. Listen, I understand. I know. I look at the things and it's like, wow, this one, it sucks. Like, they should have taken care of business, like, I get it. But I'm also not going to get caught up in the fury, if you will. Because what I see with this team is, like, they're trying to make the right changes to be a better team in the postseason. And I really believe that. And so I hang on to that.
Well, that doesn't help my narrative when it comes to wanting to have a wine fest this morning.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'll let you guys continue having the wine fest, and I'm going to go make my daughter breakfast.
All right, go make your daughter breakfast.
I'm actually surprised that she hasn't come in here once during this interview. So,
well, try to be consistent on the breakfast, and if you don't make a good breakfast, then pick up some lessons from today's bad breakfast and improve in your next breakfast. Okay.
Oh my gosh! All right, guys.
No wine.
Okay. All right.
Talk to you later.
All right, you guys have a good one.
Thank you, Katie. Bye-bye. I didn't expect that. I'm not gonna lie. No, I'm not setting up my read. I mean, really, I did. Katie wasn't screwing around this morning. I wanted to screw around a little bit because I thought she would. That's generally what she does. And again, I asked her point blank a couple times, Jason, are you frustrated? She's like, no. I'm not saying she in any way talked me down, but I will say I appreciate the outlook that, and a lot of it is because we've gone down this road earlier. I'm not excusing what happened last night, because there is no excuse for it. But I do appreciate the road of, are you making these crazy hard, is the reason why so much of this is unexplainable, that Mike Brown is trying to play chess and not checkers. And is he trying to lay in some lessons now and some habits now, which they completely crapped the bed defensively last night after doing so well against Memphis? Is this, we've talked about body blows in boxing before and how they pay off in the championship rounds. Yeah. In some weird way, are these those body blows? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to excuse it, but is that the reality? Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, I
know.
And I think we say this a lot, like, you can't tell a fan how to fan. And so some are going to be over the top. Some are going to say it's no big deal. I'm probably more on the optimistic side. Generally, I thought the Kings were awful, and I don't know of what net win there was from that performance last night for the long term. I just don't see it in front of me. Doesn't mean there isn't something hidden in there that could be. I think all the principles that they're trying to teach, I'm sure defensively, that were in play in other games where they've been better defensively or worse. I don't understand the turnovers. I agree with some of the stuff Katie said. Like, they were off. There was a bunch of that, but I didn't think they played a smart game. I think they played with fire all night long. I think they thought they could just turn it on, even if it was for 5 minutes, and win. They never turned it on, and they played with fire. I thought they deserved everything they got last night.
Yeah.
And if that's a meaningless coach player spat in there, or maybe a bigger deal in there, they deserve that. If it's Sabonis and all his offensive fouls and his turnovers, I mean, they asked for it, and I just didn't think they played a smart game. They're better than that, but not last night. And so when you play with fire like that to a team that's not very good, and if it was a good team, I think it would have been a night. Well, we're talking about a 30 point loss, but they played the perfect team to escape. They just didn't escape, and they deserve the loss.
Well, they better bring the energy tonight because Orlando's coming into town off a back-to-back, which, as we know, if a team is coming off a back-to-back, they're almost certainly going to beat the Kings, especially at home. Orlando's coming in off a back-to-back. The Kings better bring energy tonight or they're going to get boat raced.